Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is Michael Oskam from ProWestRecording.com, and the video today I have for you is an interesting one. I set out to put together a list of all of the mistakes that I see amateur mixers make, mix engineers, people starting out. I compiled a list of things that they do incorrectly on a consistent basis. And the list was long, so I condensed it down to essentially 5 things that I see consistently that are done incorrectly and really should be fixed. Okay, you guys? Now, if you catch yourself doing any of these, it's not too late. You can still catch yourself and retrain yourself, so to speak, and start integrating better mixing habits. Okay? Let's get into it. Actually, no, before we do, I want you to think about this for a second. Now, a lot of you may be mixing your own projects, or maybe you're a member of a band, or maybe you're a friend of a band, or I don't know. So maybe you're working in your bedroom, or in your office, or your garage, and you're not necessarily yet doing this on a professional level, but maybe you aspire to do it on a professional level. Even if you don't, you should always conduct your affairs in the most professional way possible. I want you to imagine that instead of your bedroom, let's say you're working in a studio and you have clients who are paying you by the hour to do your job, and they're sitting on the leather couch behind you and they're watching every move you make. Or let's imagine then that you're collaborating with a mixer, and you have to put together the sessions and a rough mix and send the session off to this guy. And what kind of session would he open? Would you be embarrassed for him to open this session and look at it? A lot of the times the answer to that question is yes. So we need to learn some really basic principles first off on how to put together a session so that we can be as efficient as possible and as professional as possible. So first on the list is organization. And it's really quite simple. What I'm talking about, although it sounds elementary, most people fail at this. So it's really good to start getting in the habit of becoming organized. What I'll start with is color coding, okay? Now, there's no correct color code, okay? There's no right or wrong way to color code something. The only wrong way would be to not have a color code. So I'll walk you through my color code really quick, and I use this consistently on every single session that I mix. And so that way, no matter which song I'm in, I know what I'm looking at without having to go into too much detail or run around or strain my eyes, so to speak. So what we're looking at here is my mix window. And we'll get into this in a second. This is a new song that I'm working on. It's one of my own that I'm real excited about. So we'll listen to it as we get into this a little bit. But so pretty simply, I always have this. If there's a click track and it's hidden right now, then it would be in dark blue all the way to the left. Next to that is on my left here is always drums, and this is a drum loop. So there's only one track, but even if it were multi-track drums, they would all be the same color, which is green. Next to my drums, I always have 3 stereo aux channels, and they're always in red. And there's only 2 here because I don't have a drum sub. So those groups are a drum subgroup, a crush, or parallel compression. I always call it crush. And my drum verb, which is dedicated verb just for my drums. And those are always in red right next to it. Next to that, sticking with the whole rhythm idea, I have my bass channel. And almost always I have a bass and a bass duplicate. And I can get into that detail a little bit later, maybe in another video as to why I do that. But usually it's to get 2 different tones. And then I blend them and they sub together in an aux called bass sub. And those are always purple or pink, like a pink purple. And the sub is always a slightly different shade. Next to that, in this instance, I have my instruments, and they're always in yellow. In this case, I have strings and piano, and then they're subbed together in an off-color aux track. Next to that, I always have guitars, sometimes acoustic and electric, sometimes one or the other. In this case, it's just acoustic guitars, and they're always in turquoise, and those are subbed together with a slightly different shade. If I had electric guitars, those would be dark blue. Next is vocals, and those are always purple, and those have some auxes associated with them, like a saturation, echo, things like this. And those are always a different shade of purple. And then there's always a room verb, which is in a brighter red. and that's reverb for my entire mix. Next to that is always my mix bus, which is a stereo aux that I've set up, and that's always in orange. Next to that's always my master fader, which is the color it presets, which is maroon. And then if my session has a print track, it's always next to that, and it's in bright blue. It's consistent. It's in every session. I know what I'm looking at without having to read any of the names. That being said, it's a good habit to get in to start naming your tracks appropriately. I can't tell you how many sessions I've seen where the names are instrument 1, 2, 3. It's a mess. I have no idea what I'm looking at. So these all kind of go into one bit of organizational tip, which is get organized, get some color coordination going on, name your tracks. If we go switch over to the edit window, drop markers in your tracks, okay, guys? That's an important thing. You want to know where you're at in the song, especially if it's not a song that you wrote, so you're not necessarily familiar with the format of the song. Listen to it a few times, drop markers, do it, trust me. Moving on. The next thing you want to look at is cleaning up your tracks. This track is a perfect example. I silenced out the silent parts, and then I did a batch fade so that there's no clicks or pops in the audio. It's a very good habit. You want to clean up all of your tracks. You don't want to have dead space in here that may be causing any sort of quantization noise or noise floor that may be brought up by a compressor. So right there are some tips, okay? Things that I see wrong consistently in amateur mixes. The next thing I want to talk about is up for debate in a lot of people's minds. In my mind, it's not up for debate. It is the way it is, and that is EQ before compression, okay? I can't tell you how many times I see this problem. In your signal flow, in your chain of processing on your channel here, it is a very good habit to get in to always place your equalization pre-compression, okay? And that doesn't mean you can't EQ afterwards. I actually do that myself frequently. I'll do subtractive EQ, then compression, then additive EQ if needed. But if I'm going to EQ just one time or both times, I'm always going to have an EQ pre-compression. The reason is this. We all know what a compressor does at this point, I would hope. It's going to bring down your transients, your peaks, and it's going to bring up your lower parts, which includes noise floor, and it also includes frequencies that you don't like. So it'd be best to get in the habit of getting rid. So let's look at this EQ, for example. In this instance, I've only done one EQ, but it's before the compressor. And these frequencies here, I've gotten rid of because I don't want this compressor to amplify any of these frequencies. Okay? If I were to do this move after the compressor at that point would have amplified these frequencies or modulated them in a way that would have made them harder to eliminate if I were EQing post-compression. So it's a very good habit to get in. If you're thinking in terms of signal flow, always put your EQ before your compressor, okay? Moving on. I guess the fourth idea that I see just always done wrong, and again, this is something that some people will say is not wrong, and I think that you're wrong if you say that, and that is, I'm tired of seeing people put reverb and delay type plugins directly on the track that they're trying to affect, okay? And I think the reason that it's done, there's two reasons that people do it. One is that your DAW lets you, okay? So you think that that's how it's, maybe you think that's how it's done. I guess ultimately the reason is you've never been shown the correct way to do it. You don't know how to set up a send and return to an aux. You just don't know how to do it. And you don't really know, if you don't know how to do it, or if you don't understand the concept behind it, then you don't really understand the benefit of doing it that way. So let me give you an example here in this song. This is kind of a ballad that I'm working on. And let's go into the verse here where I'm singing.
Amazed at the power you hold on, the simple smell of your perfume, the mystery, way down me, the rush of memories.
So in the bridge, I have a part where I've set up a send to a long delay. So I'm just going to walk you through how to do this really quick, and I'm going to show you the benefit of doing it this way. First, what you want to do is you want to come to your vocal part, your vocal track here, and click to set up a send. Oopsies. So let's assume then, let me just get rid of this. Let's not, because I don't want it to freak out. So I skipped a step. First, what you'd want to do is create a stereo aux, Shift Command N, and create a stereo aux. Okay. In this case, I've already done that. And then you can rename it long delay and recolor code it like we talked about. And that's what this would be. On it, you want to insert and instantiate your Echo plugin. In this case, I'm using SoundToys Echo Boy, which is a great plugin. And I have it set to half note and analog delay, tone, and I've tweaked that plugin. So you're gonna want to tweak that. I've also have a mid-side EQ on it to because it's kind of a ping pong dancing around effect